It was 6:37 p.m., a quiet Wednesday evening in a small college town tucked between Oregon's hills and evergreens. The kind of place where everything felt too normal to ever make headlines, at least until that night. Campus security would later describe the scene as unsettlingly calm. No signs of forced entry, no frantic shouts, just the rhythmic patter of rain outside and a faint mechanical glow pulsing from the victim's wrist. An Apple Watch, still active, still recording. What it captured in those final minutes would later become the key to unraveling a story of jealousy, deception, and digital truth. A story where every heartbeat and every movement was time-stamped in silence. But no one knew that yet. At that moment, all they saw was a young woman, motionless, her athletic gear still folded neatly at the edge of her bed. And somewhere in that apartment, her boyfriend, trembling, pacing, would tell police, "I swear, I just got here." What he didn't realize was that her Apple Watch had already told them something entirely different. I'm Martin, and on this channel, we explore true crime cases solved by everyday technology, from smartwatches to smart speakers. We uncover how the data these devices collect, often without our notice, becomes the crucial witness that criminals never accounted for. If you want more cases like this, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay tuned. All right, let's get into it. Eugene, Oregon. Known for its track and field champions, bike-friendly streets, and rain that never truly stops. At the heart of the University District stands Maplewood Apartments, home to dozens of student athletes. Inside apartment 3B, a warm glow always spilled from the windows. Fairy lights, motivational posters, a vision board filled with soccer drills and post-graduation dreams. This was Tara Hendrix's space, a 22-year-old senior, a team captain, and one of those rare people who seemed to radiate both strength and peace. Her life revolved around routine, training, nutrition, studying, repeating. And for Tara, her Apple Watch wasn't just a fitness accessory, it was her accountability partner. Every mile, every step, every heartbeat, logged. Her friends used to joke, "Tara doesn't need therapy, she's got that watch." She'd laugh and say, "It reminds me when I'm still human." But weeks later, that same device would remind investigators of something far darker, when her body stopped being one. Tara grew up about 2 hours north in Salem. The oldest of 3 siblings, she was described by her mother, Denise, as the child who never sat still. She was the kid who'd wake up before sunrise to run laps around their small cul-de-sac just because she wanted to feel the morning first. Her father, a retired fire captain, taught her discipline. Her mother taught her empathy. It was a combination that made Tara magnetic, driven but kind. At Jefferson High, she became a soccer prodigy, not because she was the strongest, but because she outlasted everyone. Her coaches would recall how she'd sprint long after practice ended, earbuds in, the same motivational playlist blaring. That routine, the structure, the logging, the monitoring, followed her to college. It's how she coped with stress, how she stayed in control, and in the end, how she'd unwittingly leave behind a digital witness to her own final moments. At the University of Oregon, Tara majored in kinesiology, studying the science of movement while living it daily on the field. Her professors adored her focus. She was the student who stayed after class to ask about muscle recovery or data visualization in sports performance. She once presented a paper titled, "When Data Meets Discipline," comparing athletes' biometric readings under stress versus rest. Ironically, the Apple Watch on her wrist that day displayed a heart rate of 62 beats per minute, calm, steady, alive. Her coach described her as a born leader with a quiet fire. She captained the women's soccer team, held 2 conference titles, and had just been invited to tryouts for a semi-pro league. Her trajectory was up, and fast. Off the field, Tara volunteered at a local shelter, mentoring underprivileged kids through sports. One of them, a 10-year-old named Jada, said, "Coach T told me to play like nobody's watching, but she always was. She watched to make sure we were okay. Everyone who knew her spoke of light, and that's exactly what made what happened next so incomprehensible. It was sophomore year when Tara met Drew Callahan. a track athlete with an easy smile, and the kind of charm that felt rehearsed but believable. He was tall, fast, confident, the golden boy type that everyone gravitated toward. They met in a sports physiology class, partners for a project on heart rate variability in competitive athletes. Fitting, in retrospect. Their chemistry was instant. He admired her discipline. She admired his spontaneity. Before long, they were inseparable. Gym sessions together, meal prep Sundays, study marathons that often ended with Netflix and laughter. Friends would later say, they looked perfect, like the cover of a college brochure. But perfection, as investigators often discover, is one of the most dangerous illusions in a relationship. By junior year, Drew had started staying over most nights. He was recovering from a knee injury that had sidelined him from competition, and Tara, being nurturing as always, wanted to help him heal. At first it was harmless. He'd cook for her, attend her games, post captions like, "Proud of my girl." But slowly his support began to turn into control. He wanted to know her schedule, who she was texting, who she trained with. He'd pick fights when she trained with male teammates, question her late study sessions. At first she brushed it off as care, then as insecurity, then as something she could manage. One night after practice, she told her roommate, "He's a little intense sometimes, but he means well." It was the kind of sentence people use to convince themselves everything's fine. Eventually he moved in, temporarily, he said, to help cover rent after her roommate graduated. Temporary became indefinite. Neighbors would later recall hearing laughter some nights and muffled arguments others. Tara's social media still painted the same picture. Smiles, early morning jogs, couple goals photos. But in her private journal, found later on her desk, her handwriting told a different story. "Sometimes I feel like I'm running for two people. One who wants to see me succeed and one who wants to keep up so I don't get too far ahead. I miss feeling safe in my own quiet." She had become an expert at curating peace online. Motivational captions, healthy recipes, snapshots of sunlight on her morning coffee. But the reality inside apartment 3B was growing heavy. Friends noticed she'd started turning down social events. Nina, her best friend from the team, said, "Tara used to call me after every match. Then it became once a week, then once a month. When I asked why, she said, I just don't want to upset him." There are always tiny shifts before everything breaks. Subtle signs most people overlook. For Tara, it was the change in tone of her text messages. She went from sending long, cheerful paragraphs to short, delayed replies. Her emojis disappeared. Her voice notes grew quieter. And then came the first red flag. A text to Nina that read, "He's been checking my Apple Watch. Says he can tell when my heart rate spikes if I'm around people." It sounded absurd. But Drew, being an athlete himself, understood the metrics. Calories burned, movement data, heart rate zones. He knew how to read the numbers. And he used that knowledge to monitor her emotional state. When she went for coffee with teammates, he'd later confront her. "Your heart rate was up for 40 minutes straight. You were nervous. Why?" She thought he was joking at first, until he wasn't. That kind of psychological monitoring, controlling someone through their data, is rare but growing. Investigators now call it digital coercion, a modern form of surveillance inside relationships. Tara didn't know it had a name. She just called it checking in. To everyone else, Tara and Drew were the model couple. They attended sports banquets together, exchanged corny gifts, and documented it all online. On Valentine's Day, Drew posted a photo of them holding hands with the caption, "My forever teammate." Tara commented with a heart emoji. But when police later examined her phone, that same night her notes app contained an entry that simply read, "Sometimes I wonder if love should make you tired." She had no visible bruises, no open complaints, no history of calling for help. To the outside world, everything looked fine. And that's exactly what made it so dangerous. Because when abuse hides behind affection, people stop believing it's possible. Nina Lopez, her teammate, was the first to sense something serious. She recalled how, one evening after practice, Tara showed up late to dinner, pale and jumpy. When Nina asked if everything was okay, Tara smiled too quickly. Then she whispered, "He gets upset if I don't answer fast enough. My watch pings him when I'm on Do Not Disturb." Nina thought she meant emotionally upset. She didn't realize Tara meant physically afraid. That night, Nina suggested she take a few days off, maybe stay with her family. Tara said, "After finals. I just need to finish this season." But seasons, like lives, sometimes end without warning. In early April, Tara got an email confirming her semi-pro tryouts. Her excitement was contagious. She screenshotted it, sent it to her mom, and posted a cryptic Instagram story that read, "Change is coming." Good kind, her mother later said she sounded lighter during their Sunday call. Tara had mentioned maybe moving home for the summer to refocus. But when her mother asked how Drew would feel about that, Tara paused before answering, "He'll understand. He just needs time to adjust," a word that now feels chilling in hindsight. Because in Drew's world, adjustment meant control. The weekend before her death, everything seemed eerily normal. Tara and Drew were seen grocery shopping, laughing, holding hands. They attended a team barbecue, posed for photos, and left early to rest. Her teammates recalled how she hugged them longer than usual that night. One said, "She kept saying how proud she was of all of us. It felt like a goodbye we didn't recognize." By Tuesday, she texted Nina one last time. "He went through my phone again. Says he found messages I deleted. I'm not sure what he saw, but he's angry." Nina replied immediately, "Come stay here tonight." Tara's response came 2 hours later. He apologized, said he just needed reassurance. "I think we're okay now." But the truth is, she wasn't reassuring him. She was calming him. Victims of coercive relationships often develop what psychologists call appeasement conditioning, the instinct to soothe the abuser to avoid escalation. It's not a weakness, it's survival. The day before it happened, Tara posted her last photo, a sunlit picture from her morning jog. Her caption read, "You can't outrun peace. You have to build it." The image gained hundreds of likes, dozens of heart emojis, but behind that serene expression was exhaustion, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Her teammates noticed she'd skipped her usual evening run. Her coach sent her a short text, "Rest up. Big day tomorrow." She replied with a thumbs up. That was at 9:17 p.m. The next day, she'd never make it to practice. Tara's life, in every sense, looked perfectly balanced, a clean, bright image of discipline and love. But as her Apple Watch would later reveal, even balance can hide chaos underneath. Because while the world saw a young athlete chasing her dreams, her device, that silent observer, was recording the truth, her racing pulse, her sudden movements, her moments of stress that no one else noticed. And on the evening of April 18, it would record something no one could ever explain until investigators decoded the final minutes of her life. What it captured would destroy the illusion Drew had built, expose a lie that almost fooled everyone, and become the most damning piece of digital evidence the state of Oregon had ever seen. The tension between Tara and Drew had been brewing for months. When he lost his track scholarship, his confidence fractured. He began depending on Tara, not for love, but for validation. Every success she celebrated reminded him of what he'd lost. Friends noticed how he'd sulk at her victories, how the praise she received seemed to sting him. At first, he masked it with humor. "Guess I'll be the trophy boyfriend now," he joked. But no one laughed louder than he did. It wasn't a joke. By early April, Drew was spiraling. He dropped classes and spent most of his time on his phone, scrolling through Tara's posts. He dissected her photos like evidence, watching who commented, who liked, who tagged her. The smallest thing could ignite his suspicion. One message from a male teammate could lead to hours of silent rage. He started showing up at her practices unannounced. When coaches asked if he was waiting for her, he'd smile and say, "Just picking her up." But Tara was starting to feel smothered. She confided in her best friend Nina that she wanted out after graduation. She said she needed space, a reset. Drew overheard that conversation. He confronted her later, accusing her of planning to leave him once she got famous. That night, her smartwatch recorded an erratic heart rate and restless sleep. On April 18th, Tara's final day began unremarkably. Her morning routine never changed. She woke at 6, went for a jog, showered, then packed her gym bag. Her Apple Watch tracked every movement, normal, rhythmic. She even texted her mom that she'd call the next evening after practice. She didn't know it would be the last message she'd ever send. At 5:30 p.m., she arrived home. The hallway cameras showed her entering the building, earbuds in, smiling faintly. 10 minutes later, Drew's car pulled up. He carried a duffel bag, looked straight at the security lens, and walked in. Inside, her Apple Watch showed calm activity, movement around the apartment, a stable heart rate. At 6:35, the pattern changed. Her pulse spiked sharply, climbing from 80 beats per minute to over 140 in seconds, the kind of jump caused by panic, not exercise. At 6:37, the data turned chaotic, irregular rhythms, abrupt stops, then complete stillness. No one heard screams. Rain muffled the sounds. But the device didn't lie. It kept recording small jolts of movement, the kind that come not from a living body but from being moved. At 6:44, the heartbeat flatlined. 15 minutes later, Drew called 911. His voice trembled as he told dispatchers he had just arrived home and found her bleeding. He said he'd been out picking up dinner. Paramedics rushed to the apartment, but Tara was gone. Police noticed small inconsistencies immediately. The takeout receipt he presented showed a 6:49 pickup time, not 6 o'clock. His car's GPS placed him near the apartment at 6:30. When asked, he said maybe the system glitched. He repeated that he loved her, that he'd never hurt her. He even told officers she must have left the door unlocked for someone else. But the digital lock showed the last entry code used at 6:11, Drew's. Detectives found Tara's phone still unlocked on the coffee table. Her Apple Watch, spattered faintly with red, remained on her wrist. Its screen was still active, displaying a notification. Unusual heart rate detected at 6:37 p.m. They photographed everything but didn't yet realize the importance of that alert. The next morning, a young digital forensics officer connected the watch to its paired laptop. Within minutes, the heart rate graph appeared. The data told a story no one could refute. A sudden surge of fear, a struggle, then silence. All within the window Drew claimed he was away. For days afterward, Drew played the grieving boyfriend. He stood beside Tara's parents at the vigil, wept on local news, and swore to find whoever did this. People believed him. They always do at first. But machines don't believe. They record. When investigators compared the Apple Watch's precise timeline with Drew's phone location, everything aligned too neatly to be coincidence. His phone disconnected from Wi-Fi at 6:10, reconnected at 6:46, the exact time gap during which Tara's heart stopped. His movements, her silence, his alibi, her proof. The truth was already sealed inside her wrist, ticking quietly as the world mourned her. When the first wave of investigation reports came in, nothing about the case looked simple. There was no forced entry, no missing valuables, and no sign of a third party. Everything pointed to an intimate encounter turned deadly, but detectives needed proof, something that couldn't be explained away by grief or coincidence. In the early days, Drew played the part well. He attended every press briefing, stood close to Tara's family, even helped organize her memorial. To the public, he was the image of a devastated partner. But behind closed doors, detectives found his behavior oddly scripted. He repeated the same sentences word for word as though rehearsed. She was fine when I left. I came back and she was gone. Weeks passed with little progress. The physical evidence was thin. Partial prints, clean surfaces, and a kitchen knife wiped down almost to sterility. Forensics couldn't pull enough DNA to make a match. The case was at risk of going cold, until Officer Mallory Quinn joined the team. She was young, soft-spoken, and new to the department, but her specialty was digital forensics. While others chased confessions, she chased code. Mallory asked a simple question that changed everything. Was the Apple Watch data ever pulled? It hadn't been. The watch was logged into evidence, tagged, and forgotten. Nobody on the team had the right software to extract the data. Mallory did. Late one evening, she connected the watch to Tara's laptop, which detectives had seized earlier but hadn't yet unlocked. The moment it synced, a flood of files appeared: biometrics, movement logs, GPS pings, and an automatic iCloud backup. Mallory scrolled through the activity timeline until she reached April 18th. What she saw made her stomach twist. From 6:35 to 6:45 p.m., the watch recorded violent fluctuations, heart rate spikes, step bursts, then an abrupt stop. But what truly mattered was what came next. The device kept tracking motion for 2 minutes after the heart rate flatlined. According to the accelerometer, the body moved roughly 6 meters, then dropped. The data was too precise to be guesswork. It was the digital imprint of the crime itself. Mallory cross-referenced the timestamps with Drew's cell data. His phone's GPS pinged off the nearest tower at 6:39, exactly when the movement occurred. His dinner run was a lie. The technology proved he hadn't left at all. The next discovery was subtle but devastating. Tara's Apple Watch had attempted to connect to nearby Bluetooth devices during that same window. One of the devices it detected was Drew's phone. Even though he'd later deleted his Bluetooth history, her watch had already logged the interaction. When Mallory presented her findings to Detective Grant, the room went silent. Every movement, every heartbeat, every second of Tara's last 10 minutes was there, and none of it fit Drew's story. Detectives decided to bring him in again, casually without alerting the media. They asked him to clarify a few things about the night. Drew stuck to his original version. He'd gone out for food, returned, and found her. But when they confronted him with the smartwatch data, his face drained of color. He stammered that the data must be wrong and that watches can glitch. Mallory slid a printed graph across the table. It showed Tara's heart rate soaring to 160 at 6:37, then dropping to 0 by 6:44. Beneath it, a line traced Drew's phone location inside the apartment during that same time. 2 devices, 2 truths, 1 story. He had no answer. Within 48 hours, detectives obtained a warrant for his phone and laptop. There, they found deleted searches. Can police read Apple Watch data? And does heart rate stay after death? He'd tried to erase everything, but cloud backups don't forgive. During interrogation, his calm exterior cracked. He claimed they argued, that she tripped, that he panicked. Then he said nothing. Silence replaced denial. On June 2nd, nearly 7 weeks after Tara's death, Drew Callahan was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The state's evidence wasn't built on eyewitnesses or confessions, but on something colder and more objective: a digital heartbeat that refused to lie. At trial, prosecutors displayed the heart rate graph to the jury. Each spike was a pulse of terror, each drop a signal of life fading. They explained how her smartwatch kept logging even after she collapsed, capturing motion consistent with her body being dragged. Then came the timeline overlay: Drew's cell data, the Bluetooth detection, the restaurant receipt. Together, they formed a sequence too perfect to dispute. The defense argued that smartwatch data could be inaccurate under stress. Experts disagreed. Apple's engineers testified that while no device is flawless, the margin of error could not explain the precise synchronization between her readings and his movements. The verdict took less than 3 hours. Guilty. When the sentence was read, Tara's mother held the watch in her hands, the same one that had recorded her daughter's final moments. She said later, "It felt like she was still speaking, just through numbers." In the years since, that case has become a cornerstone in digital forensics courses, not because of its brutality, but because it proves something haunting. Technology doesn't just record our lives, it can also bear witness to our deaths. And in Tara's case, her Apple Watch didn't just tell time, it told the truth. In the months following the verdict, the campus that once pulsed with chants from the soccer field fell eerily quiet. A memorial bench now sits outside the athletics complex with Tara's name carved in silver letters, facing the field she once captained. Students still leave flowers there, mostly teammates, sometimes strangers who only know her story through podcasts and true crime documentaries. The impact of her case rippled far beyond Eugene. Tech companies began re-examining how wearable data could serve both privacy and justice. Investigators, once skeptical of consumer devices, started enrolling in new forensic courses focused solely on digital biometrics. Police academies began teaching modules with titles like Smart Devices as Silent Witnesses. The technology that once sold fitness and lifestyle suddenly carried the weight of evidence and morality. For Tara's family, the aftermath was quieter but heavier. Her mother, Denise, never removed the bracelet her daughter gifted her on graduation day. In court, she said, "I used to tell her, don't rely on machines too much. Now I thank God one was there when I couldn't be." Those words echoed across news stations for weeks. Detective Marla Grant retired shortly after the case closed. When interviewed years later, she said this one never left her. "It's not the crime that stays with you," she explained. "It's that tiny green light on her wrist that kept blinking when everything else had stopped." She paused before adding, "It was like the world trying to hold on to her heartbeat a little longer." Mallory Quinn, the young analyst who found the data, became a leading voice for ethical tech use in investigations. She often reminds her students that every bite of evidence represents a life. "People think technology is cold," she said in one seminar, "but sometimes it's the only thing that feels empathy in the aftermath. It remembers when everyone else forgets." As for Drew, his appeals were denied. He's serving a life sentence without parole at Oregon State Penitentiary. He still maintains that the watch data was misinterpreted, that something went wrong with the sensors. But time has a way of dulling excuses. The same time he tried to manipulate has become the one thing he can't escape. Media coverage of the case reignited debates over digital privacy. Should every device that tracks your pulse be potential evidence? Where is the line between safety and surveillance? For Tara's family, the answer is simple. If it can save one life, it's worth it. For civil rights advocates, the issue remains complicated. The world, it seems, is learning that justice now comes with terms and conditions. In the years that followed, several crimes across the country were solved through wearable tech. Fitbits that proved false timelines, pacemakers that betrayed their owners, smart speakers that overheard violence. Each case owes a debt to Tara's. Her story marked a shift where human testimony and machine memory became equals in the courtroom. Whenever journalists revisit the story, they play the same clip from the trial. The prosecutor showing the jury the heart rate graph, the last line rising, falling, then flattening. It looks simple on a screen, but those who were there say the silence that followed felt sacred, like a heartbeat shared by everyone in the room before it finally disappeared. Tara's story ends where it began, in data. But between those numbers lives a reminder that technology, for all its cold precision, carries something deeply human. It listens, it remembers. It doesn't forget when we need it most. So next time you glance at your smartwatch counting steps or tracking sleep, remember this. Every beat, every mile, every ordinary moment could become extraordinary proof of truth someday. And that's the story of how an Apple Watch, a device designed to measure life, recorded the moment it was taken, and in doing so, gave that life its final voice. In the years since Tara's case closed, people still speak her name like a kind of shorthand for the way technology rewrote justice. Podcasts revisit her story every few months. Documentaries replay the courtroom footage. Law students study the timelines that once existed only inside her watch. Every time the graph appears on a screen, those rising and falling heartbeats frozen in time, it feels like watching her fight to exist, even in data form. Her parents still live in Salem. They turned her old bedroom into a scholarship office for young female athletes who can't afford university gear. Denise says she keeps Tara's watch in a small glass case by her desk. "It still turns on," she says softly. "Sometimes I press the screen just to see the light." The display doesn't show messages or maps anymore, just the default clock face. But for her, that flicker means her daughter's story still ticks forward. Detective Grant visits them once a year. She never stays long, never brings up details, only checks in to make sure they're okay. The last time she came, she told Denise that the department had begun issuing mandatory digital forensics training for all homicide investigators. "Your daughter's case changed how we look at evidence," she said. "It changed how we listen to silence." Mallory Quinn, the young analyst who first cracked the data, now consults for state agencies. She wrote a paper titled "The Heartbeat Witness," using Tara's case as the foundation for digital evidence reform. Her proposal led to Oregon becoming one of the first states to include wearable data under its forensic preservation laws. "I don't think of it as technology solving a murder," she said in an interview. I think of it as a young woman leaving the truth behind in the only language she could, her pulse. For many students who follow Tara's story, the most haunting detail isn't the crime itself, but the quiet precision of it all. The way every second was accounted for, the way her body's final movements told the truth no one else could speak. It's unsettling knowing that something you wear casually could someday testify for you. But it's also comforting. The same devices we use to count steps and sleep cycles now help deliver justice to those who can no longer speak. The courtroom where Drew was sentenced has been renovated since, but the judge's closing words remain quoted online. Time is what you took from her, and time is what now defines your guilt. Reporters said Drew looked down at his hands, expression blank, as if he finally understood that he could never outsmart the one thing that had been recording him all along. There's a mural downtown now, painted by local art students, of Tara in her soccer jersey, one wrist raised mid-run, the faint outline of a glowing watch visible against the blue sky. Beneath it are the words, "Truth has a heartbeat." Every spring during the university's women's soccer season, the crowd falls silent for 30 seconds before the kickoff. No whistles, no drums, no cheers. Just silence. Some say it's a tribute. Others call it a promise. Either way, it's the sound of a heartbeat remembered. Stories like Tara's remind us that technology isn't just data, it's memory. Every text, every mile logged, every heartbeat stored is proof that we were here. Proof that we mattered. Proof that no lie can last forever when truth has already been recorded. I'm Martin. If you found this story moving, share it, because awareness is its own kind of justice. And if you'd like to see more cases where ordinary devices become extraordinary double